Hi everyone, my name is Rachael Bell. My topic for the presentation was competence to consent to a search or seizure. So I started with a summary of chapter 7. So this section covers competence to consent to a search or seizure. It also covers the way that officers can unlawfully conduct a search or seizure by wording their questions to make the suspect, quote unquote, volunteer to a search out of fear for the consequences he or she might face if they do not consent to the search. Since not all civilians are told they have the option to refuse the search, the majority agrees to the search, possibly incriminating themselves in the process when the officer does not have a warrant for the search to begin with. Unlawful searches or seizures cannot be used in court and are typically not used in the prosecution's case. So, searches and seizures come from the Fourth Amendment in the Constitution. So, what is the Fourth Amendment? The Constitution, through the Fourth Amendment, protects people from unreasonable searches and seizures by the government. The Fourth Amendment protects person's their themselves, schools, and cars from unlawful searches by police officers. The Fourth Amendment does not protect against searches conducted with consent of the person being searched or searches conducted due to reasonable suspicion. So if an officer has probable cause and asks the citizen to give their consent, then that is not unlawful. So what are searches and seizures? I pulled a quote from Cornell Law School. Search and seizure in criminal law is used to describe a law enforcement agent's examination of a person's home, vehicle, or business to find evidence that a crime has been committed. So searches are used to find the evidence that could help prove a crime has been committed. So that's where the probable cause comes in. If the officer feels that someone has committed a crime and they want to search either their persons, their vehicles, their homes, they have to either obtain a warrant or ask for consent. Seizures are when the evidence is taken from the premises. So during the search, if they find something that could be evidence for the prosecution or the case, then they will take the evidence. So the evidence taken from a search and seizure must be taken lawfully or it will not be admissible in court. If it was taken without consent or without a warrant, that is unlawful seizure and it will be thrown away. Why are searches and seizures important? This quote was pulled from the Melton reading. The government obtains much of the evidence used in criminal cases through searches of people's houses, effects, and papers, and through seizures and searches of persons. So, without the process of conducting a search and seizure, many criminal cases would go unsolved. This is because lawyers need evidence to be given to them. They can't go and find the evidence. So, with the evidence found during a search or seizure, they could help close a case. So the evidence and information seized after a search can lead to the conviction of a criminal that lawyers and courts would not have gotten otherwise. So again, it has to be given to them. They can't go find it. And the evidence submitted from a search and or seizure can be submitted in for the prosecution, but only if obtained with a warrant. Otherwise, the evidence will be dismissed. Not just with the warrant, also with the consent of the person being searched. Otherwise, again, unlawful searching and seizures. So, what makes a search or seizure lawful versus unlawful? The Supreme Court has also held that for Fourth Amendment purposes, a person's consent can be quote unquote voluntary, even if the person does not know of the right to refuse consent. So, a lawful search requires a warrant or consent from the individual being searched. So, a warrant is the easiest way for a search to automatically be lawful. And then an unlawful search is when a person is coerced into giving consent to the search, or the officer does not have a warrant, or the officer searches without the individual's knowledge or consent. How does an individual get coerced into giving consent for a search or seizure? Police can use multiple tactics to coerce an individual into consenting to a search, including intimidation. So this is just fear tactics or the use of their position to place fear into the citizen, not providing clear information on what they are doing. This could also be why they're doing what they're doing if they don't give clear information, and not providing the citizens with knowing their rights, i.e., the right to decline a search without a warrant. So, in the reading, Melton stated that there was a search scenario conducted where they found that requests phrased in an interrogatory fashion, such as, would you mind if I came in and looked around, resulted in higher perceived choice than did declarative requests, such as, I would appreciate if I could come in and look around. So the asking made people seem like they had more of a choice than being told that the officers need to take a look. This is just the media link. I posted it in the discussion. Why don't individuals decline consent? Again, another quote from Melton. People consented to search for one primary reason, fear of reprisal if they refused. If individuals do not know the full extent of their rights, they still fear what will happen to them if they decline a search. This fear of the unknown consequences that will happen to them if they decline a search leads the individual to agree to the search. If the individual does not know the extent of their rights, they will not try to decline the search because they think that they need to consent to the search anyway. So this goes back to the previous slide where they don't know the full extent of their rights. My discussion question was, why are police legally allowed to coerce citizens to consent to a search or seizure? My conclusion is that it's very important to know your rights, and if an officer asks to conduct a search or seizure without a warrant but has not told you that you have the right to decline, then the search can be conducted unlawfully, so any evidence they find will be thrown out in court. And if the probable cause is enough to raise so much suspicion, the officer will go file for a warrant. Otherwise, thank you for listening to my presentation, and that is it for today.